For 100 years, this face has stared back at us. Golden, perfect, eternal. But it's a beautiful lie. This mask shows a god. Flawless skin, perfect symmetry. The face ancient Egyptians wanted the afterlife to see. But behind the gold lay a teenager, frail, disabled, the product of generations of royal incest. His parents were brother and sister, and that decision made for power would shape his entire painful existence. For 3,000 years, his real face remained hidden, wrapped in linen, sealed in darkness, waiting. November 1922. The Valley of the Kings. British archaeologist Howard Carter had searched for years. His wealthy patron, Lord Carnarvon, was ready to give up. But Carter begged for one more season, one more chance. On November 4th, a worker's shovel struck stone. A step, then another. 12 steps leading down into darkness. 3 weeks later, Carter stood before a sealed doorway. He made a small hole, held up a candle. Carnarvon asked the question that would echo through history, "Can you see anything?" Carter's reply, "Yes, wonderful things." He was staring at gold. Everywhere the glint of gold. Chariots, thrones, statues. And beyond them, sealed for over 3,000 years, the burial chamber of the boy King Tutankhamun.
It's moving.
3 years later, Carter finally reached the mummy itself. What he found shocked him. This was no warrior king. The body was small, fragile. The resin that preserved him had glued him to his coffin like cement. Carter measured him, 5 feet 6 inches, thin, a young man barely into adulthood when he died. But the real secrets of Tutankhamun's face wouldn't be revealed for another 80 years, until science caught up. January 5, 2005. For the first time since Carter's discovery, Tutankhamun left his tomb. Not for a museum, for a hospital scanner. 1,700 high-resolution CT images captured every detail of his skull, every bone, every deformity. 3 forensic teams were assembled. French, American, Egyptian. The Americans worked blind. They didn't even know whose skull they were reconstructing. If they all reached the same conclusion, the science would be undeniable. The results were remarkable. All 3 teams produced nearly identical faces. The skull told a story of suffering. An elongated head, natural, not artificially shaped. A severe overbite that ran in his family. A receding chin. Features that Egyptian artists had softened and idealized in every portrait. But the scans revealed something else. Something that explained the 130 walking sticks found in his tomb. Tutankhamun could barely walk. 2010. Egyptian geneticist Yahya Gad extracted DNA from the 3,000-year-old bones. What he found was devastating. Tutankhamun's father was Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh. His mother was Akhenaten's own sister. Brother and sister, king and queen. In royal Egypt, this was normal. Keeping the bloodline pure. Keeping power in the family. But biology has rules. When siblings have children, dangerous recessive genes combine. Deformities emerge. Immune systems weaken. Tutankhamun inherited all of this. His left foot was clubbed, twisted inward from birth. Bones in his toes were dying from a disease called choler. Every step would have been painful. The DNA revealed something else. Malaria. Not one infection, but several different strains over his short life. His weakened immune system, damaged by generations of inbreeding, couldn't fight it off. This was no warrior pharaoh riding chariots into battle. This was a sick teenager leaning on a cane. The walking sticks weren't ceremonial symbols of power. They showed signs of actual use, worn handles, scuffed tips. Tutankhamun needed them. And unlike every other pharaoh, ancient artists showed him seated while hunting. while shooting arrows, while doing activities that kings were always shown standing for. They couldn't hide it entirely. Even in propaganda, they had to acknowledge that their god-king could not stand for long. The boy behind the golden mask was in constant pain. So how do you rebuild a face from a skull? The science is called forensic facial approximation. Here's how it works. The skull is the blueprint. Every bump and ridge tells forensic artists where muscles attached, where fat deposits formed. Tissue depth markers are placed at specific points, dozens of them, based on population data matched to ancestry. Then clay is carefully applied, layer by layer, muscle by muscle, following anatomy that's identical in every human being. For Tutankhamun, French sculptor Elizabeth Daines led the official reconstruction. She'd previously recreated Neanderthals and ancient hominids. Now she faced the most famous skull in archaeology. She had advantages no one before her possessed. 1700 CT images, the actual death mask for reference, wooden statues made during his lifetime, and the conclusions of forensic anthropologist Jean-Noel Vignal, who had mapped every feature the skull could tell us. The skull gave her certainties. The elongated shape, unusual but natural. The severe overbite that pushed his upper teeth forward. The narrow nasal opening typical of North African populations. The weak, receding chin. What the skull couldn't tell her, exact skin tone, eye color, hairstyle. For these, she relied on Egyptian artistic conventions and modern population data. The result would finally show the world who Tutankhamun really was. When the reconstruction was unveiled in 2005, it confirmed what the golden mask had hidden for millennia. This was no golden god. This was a teenager, vulnerable, human, with all the imperfections his artists erased. The overbite his family shared for generations. The chin that receded because of inbreeding. Features royalty considered flaws to hide. But look closer, past the imperfections, and you see something the mask captured after all. Youth, innocence, vulnerability. 2022 brought another reconstruction. Bioarchaeologist Andrew Nelson used updated techniques and new CT data. His result was different, leaner, perhaps more realistic about Tut's fragile health. 2023 saw yet another attempt. Brazilian researcher Cicero Mores created digital approximations, confirming the unusual skull shape. A brain cavity larger than average. Features that matched no other Egyptian mummies in their database. Tutankhamun was unique. Even in death, even in bone, he stood apart. Some things remain debated. His exact skin tone. Science cannot determine this from remains. The 2005 reconstruction used a medium brown, based on modern Egyptian averages. Critics called it too light. Others called it too dark. What we know with certainty, he was North African. His heritage was the heritage of the Nile Valley. The endless modern arguments about his race would have baffled the ancient Egyptians, who never thought in those terms. So after 100 years of mystery, after CT scans and DNA tests and forensic science, what did Tutankhamun actually look like? He was 19 years old when he died, 5 feet 6 inches tall, lean and frail. He walked with a painful limp. His skull was longer than normal, his brain larger than average. He had a pronounced overbite, buck teeth that his family shared for generations, a weak, receding chin. He had large eyes, a sloping, prominent nose, full lips, skin the warm brown of the Nile Valley, the face of a boy who became a god, and suffered for it. Pause 3 seconds of silence as face holds on screen. This is Tutankhamun, not the golden god, not the perfect pharaoh, a teenager born into unimaginable privilege and unimaginable pain. He ruled Egypt for 10 years. He reversed his father's religious revolution. He restored the old gods. He tried to heal a divided kingdom. And he did it all while barely able to walk, while fighting malaria, while his own body betrayed him with every step. He was 19 when he died, probably from infection after breaking his leg. His weakened immune system, damaged by generations of incest, couldn't save him. This face is 3,300 years old, and it is heartbreakingly human. Imagine being 9 years old. Your father dies, and suddenly you are responsible for all of Egypt. Your father Akhenaten had banned the old gods, closed their temples, moved the capital, made enemies of the priesthood. Now you must fix it. A child, barely able to stand, surrounded by advisors who want power for themselves. He changed his name from Tutankhamun to Tutankhamun, erasing his father's god, embracing Amun instead. He moved the capital back to Thebes, reopened the temples, restored the priesthood. Historians debate how much was his choice versus his advisor. He was so young, so sick. How much agency could he really have had? But his tomb tells a different story. The sheer number of personal items suggests a boy who loved life, who fought to live. He had board games for entertainment, hunting equipment, even though he had to sit to use it, chariots he probably never rode, clothing in multiple sizes as he grew. Someone preserved his childhood. Someone wanted him to have everything in the afterlife he'd been denied in life. And there were the two tiny coffins, his children, both girls, both stillborn or died shortly after birth, products of his marriage to his half-sister Ankhesenamun. The cycle of incest continued, and it cost him everything: his daughters, his health, and finally his life. After his death, they tried to erase him. His successors removed his name from monuments, buried his memory. The heretic son, too associated with his father's failed revolution. They wanted Egypt to forget he ever existed. 33 centuries passed. His tomb, buried under workers' huts, escaped the grave robbers who emptied every other royal burial. The very erasure that was meant to destroy him became his salvation. He was forgotten so completely that no one knew to look for him, until Howard Carter found those steps in the sand. Today, Tutankhamun is the most famous pharaoh who ever lived. Not for his conquests, he had none. Not for his monuments, he built few. But because we found him complete. Because we could finally see behind the golden mask. Now we see him. Not the god king of propaganda. Not the golden perfection of his mask. We see a disabled teenager who carried the weight of an empire while his own body failed him. We see what 3,000 years tried to hide. We see a human being. Tutankhamun, born to power, broken by blood, erased by history, resurrected by science, the boy king who couldn't walk without a cane, who ruled an empire through constant pain, who looked nothing like his golden mask, and who, after 33 centuries, finally has his real face seen.